I think most of us can agree that anime goes through phases of what genre is the most popular and most prevalent. In the early days, it was mecha. Currently, it's isekai. But in the late 90s and 2000s, that title belonged to Shonen Battle. For many modern fans, this genre was their gateway, most of them still having nostalgia for the big three of Naruto, Bleach, and One Piece. There were tons of other series that tried to ride the success of this genre, many of them succeeding, but others failing and falling into obscurity. However, all of these series can thank their original, the granddaddy that inspired many of our most beloved shows, Dragon Ball Z. DBZ is still the most well-known anime of all time to this day, still highly quoted, mimicked, mocked, and loved. A lot of the tropes of shonen battle anime started here, to be copied, made worse, or improved upon by its successors. In many ways, Dragon Ball Z is the best of what shonen battle anime can do, the premiere of the genre. And in others, it exemplifies the worst problems the genre has, because DBZ is the one who inspired all of it. This video is going to be very back and forth, and at the end of the day, I still enjoy Dragon Ball Z, but I don't love it like everyone else does, and some of what I'm going to talk about is exactly why. But I'll start off positive. The series really knows how to do build-up, leading up to the big reveal of an arc or a moment that pays off pretty well. For example, let's look at the Saiyan arc. The series continuously ramps up the power of its villains and the stakes of the conflict. The previous villain Raditz managed to easily overpower the two strongest characters from the last series, the original Dragon Ball. Now there's two more powerful Saiyans on the horizon, the main character is dead, and everyone needs to get a lot stronger to fight. There's this palpable tension throughout these episodes. And even when the Saiyans do arrive, not every character is there to meet them, and it's quickly shown that there's still a noticeable power gap between them even after all of that training. One of the common jokes of the series is how characters often have to wait for Goku, but here it really does work. The Z fighters are trying their hardest, many of them dying before Goku arrives. So the tension and build-up is all about wondering if Goku will get there in time to save what little heroes remain. There's also the anticipation if Goku's training and power increase will be enough, and it pays off as he easily handles Nappa. Of course, this in turn builds up how strong Vegeta is, leading to a rather long but satisfying fight. The arc really works because it continuously ramps up the stakes and the tension, which in turn makes the big heroic moments feel all that much greater and earned, because you had the audience go through these incredible lows to reach those incredible highs. And to go further on, let's talk about the first Super Saiyan transformation. The entire Namek and Frieza saga is big, and pretty inconsistent, but it does still build up the Super Saiyan transformation. Vegeta and Frieza will drop mentions of the legend, making it a precedent before the actual event. And so as the saga goes on, and more villains show up getting stronger and stronger and stronger, the audience is left wondering just how strong Frieza is. He seems untouchable, if even his minions could handle the strongest heroes. The arc effectively uses the minor villains to build up the main villain. And when Goku finally faces off with Frieza, it's a huge struggle, with what we think is Goku at about his peak, the supposed Super Saiyan as Vegeta calls him. However, as we know, Frieza survives the Spirit Bomb, cripples Piccolo, and kills Krillin, leading up to the actual Super Saiyan transformation. That is the big payoff to the arc, and it honestly still holds up really well. And stuff like this is pretty consistent throughout the show. It's something that a lot of future shonen battle often try to mimic, whether it be keeping the main hero away for long periods of time to give them, say, a training arc, or even ramp up the main threat and build up the big confrontation, or just constantly ramping up the next villain to face by comparing them against each other. However, speaking of that transformation, it's something that really bogs down the series as a whole. While it's cool that other characters do get it, and of course it really works in the initial moment, it becomes less and less special as time goes on. At first, it was a legendary transformation that nobody thought was attainable. Then it became mandatory to win fights. DBZ became so reliant on Super Saiyan that it even added extra forms to it. Sometimes they're even hard to distinguish from each other. The creator, Akira Toriyama, forgot about Super Saiyan 2, and while 3 is a really cool surprise, that hair is just a punchline waiting to happen. And along with that, it really drives away from the martial arts, the very techniques, the unique set pieces. It's all beam attacks and beam struggles, and it inspired most every other shonen to also have the characters reach a special transformation. Bankai, Sage Mode, Gears, Dragon Force, they all have to have one. Some are more effective than others. Sometimes there are just way too many of them, like how most Soul Reapers get some kind of Bankai. Others are pretty rare, and some series just have a ton of transformations, like Naruto. But this also means that some characters will always have an edge over other ones. And on that note, the transformation means that everyone who isn't a Saiyan is useless, with the exception of Piccolo. So, the humans, over half the cast. Yeah, even in the Super Saiyan saga, the human fighters weren't that useful, but they were still able to compete. Once Super Saiyan becomes more common, their moments are practically non-existent. Tien gets one cool scene against Cell, and that's about it. This large cast of characters is essentially standing around waiting while the Saiyans fight. They're basically moral support, and because of this, it means that their fighting styles also get lost. Yeah, they do copy techniques from each other all the time, but even if they all had the same powers, they'd fight differently. But when it's all the same few fighters, the battles are just bigger numbers with their power levels going up, or just bigger set pieces. There's only occasions of interesting techniques or strategies that are brought into fights, and unfortunately, this is something that also gets copied by other series. While some are better at handling their cast, Shonen Battle always has to have a big one, whom many will not get much screen time and won't offer much in their fights. Bleach has a huge cast, and people often forget that half of them exist. Naruto is very inconsistent with how it uses its characters, and even shows like My Hero Academia and One Piece, which are notably better at handling their bigger cast, are still quite flawed. There are so many characters to juggle that many of them just simply get left behind, whether they're too weak or don't get enough focus. Though, the characters the series does focus on are still interesting. Goku is at heart a kind of basic character, someone who does the right thing, loves to eat, and loves to fight. And while he isn't necessarily pure of heart, as his love of fighting and battle can lead him astray from the model hero, he is still a good man, with admittedly not the biggest intellect, though that only becomes a problem after Z. He's still clever in a fight, and he'll do what he needs to protect the people he cares about. Goku is a model that's certainly been copied and pasted for heroes in the future, to the point where characters like Ichigo and Midoriya feel like a breath of fresh air amongst the copycats. And then there's the rivalry between Goku and Vegeta. It had been built upon since one of the first arcs of the show, with Vegeta always behind Goku in terms of strength. They would be each other's inspiration to get stronger, though not always out of respect. It does make it so they both have a goal to achieve and keeps them going forward, as well as keeps their interactions quite fun. While Vegeta does do some questionable things to achieve this goal, it's still a form of growth for the character, and rivalry is definitely something that many series have tried to capture the magic on. In fact, it feels like a mandatory bullet point for a show. Some succeed, like My Hero Academia having the beloved character Bakugo, and sometimes you get Sasuke from Naruto. You don't want Sasuke from Naruto, because 1, he's just not that well written of a character, and 2, he was thrown in because rivalries were popular. In fact, a lot of the things I've talked about were thrown into various shows or series because they were popular, and guess who started it? You guessed it, DBZ. And finally, this point doesn't have much to do with Dragon Ball Z, but rather how it was broadcast. It, as well as many other Shonen Battle afterwards, were weekly. Rather than appearing in seasons, the show was released with an episode a week. This meant that the animation could be pretty inconsistent, as sometimes it looked really good, and other times it looked really trash, and then it would look average. And the same can be said for its successors, very inconsistent animation. Though that is more of an industry thing in general, I feel as though it's still worth mentioning. My Hero Academia, Jujutsu Kaisen, and others are taking the seasonal approach, and are honestly better because of it. DBZ did a lot for the genre, both good and bad. Audiences and creators were inspired by it for years to come. Many still hold it as the premier anime, their absolute favorite, and while that is fair, it's important to acknowledge what it did right, what it did wrong, and what it influenced. And what it influenced was quite a lot, since, at the end of the day, it is the best and the worst of what the genre has to offer. If you guys enjoyed this video, please go ahead and click that subscribe button, and if you want to be notified for future content, also go ahead and click that bell as well. Thank you so much, and have a wonderful day.